2014 Namib Quest is brought to you by Windhoek Light. The Windhoek Light Namib Quest. The name alone conjures up images of windswept explorers trudging up and down the barren dunes of one of the world's largest deserts, seeking, finding, exploring not just their surroundings but their innermost parts in search of truth and beauty. And that is what the Namib Quest has become. It's a 6-day mountain bike stage race that begins in the capital city of Namibia, Windhoek, and ends a very long and testing 6 days later in the charming coastal town of Swakopmund.
Certainly we'd like to position ourselves a bit different to what the other events are offering. We don't want to have the, the numbers, the more commercial sort of side of things. And I think that's what people are looking for. The guys get tired of riding the bigger events, each year, around the country in South Africa, Namibia. So I think, this is something special. It's something different. It's completely out in the wild. We don't know of any other event that actually builds up a race village every night in a different location, and it's completely, out of the sort of residential or city sphere. We overjoyed the fact that we've actually doubled our numbers this year. Obviously the popularity of the event is growing, particularly in South Africa, Namibia, locally. We're very chuffed with the fact that we've got a team from Switzerland this year, so we're even reaching into Europe at this stage. We will certainly limit the amount of riders to, I would say, a maximum of 200. We'd like to keep that personal touch. We'd like to keep that camaraderie with the riders inside the camp at night. I think that's a very important element of the event, and certainly one that brings people back again.
The vast and often inhospitable Namibia certainly offers some of the most remote, diverse, pristine and untouched wilderness areas to be found anywhere on Earth. It is this unspoilt environment, often inaccessible but for just the hardiest souls, that the intrepid MTBers would venture into over 6 days. Registration and the pre-race briefing was the least strenuous thing these men and women would do for the next 130 odd hours.
It's the most beautiful country in the world. It's like we've been here a few times on holiday, and I saw last year, I saw it on TV, and I said straight away to my wife, I'm going to do that. And here we are. Lucky us.
This year we know what is ahead of us, so we're a little bit more prepared for this year. So we will see how things is going today for us. We are taking it day by day. So we hope that we can do better than last year's results, but we will see how we are performing.
At the start in Windhoek, the 33 two-man teams who are required to finish each stage together were scared, apprehensive and not just a bit worried, as the infamous Namibia heat was already very palpable early on. The start of any race is always filled with anxiety, adrenaline and expectation. The 2014 Windhoek Light Namib Quest was no different, just 6 times worse. It was clear that there was a long way to go as the riders left at a very sedate pace. Race village number 1, with its impressive rows of tents and braais, was a mere 78 kilometers away, with a total ascent en route of almost 1,300 meters and a total descent of almost exactly the same number. However, that did not mean it was flat. In fact, the biggest climb of the day would come at the 10k mark and last for an excruciating 14 k's. With the Namibian capital fast disappearing with every turn of the pedals, it was still the gentle roll of the tarmac under the knobblies, but that too would soon change. Up front, it was Team Jupiter Drawing Board's all-white jerseys that set the pace, with Michael van der Herik doing all the pulling and his partner Christo Nim watching the rear. Sandwiched in the middle, it was Team 102, who featured Jacques Sellier and Frans-Antoine Gerber riding for Zinplex. The local population had never quite seen anything like it, and it would be a while before these bovines would forget the sight of this colourful human train on their iron horses. The accompanying commentary confirmed it. We think that means go well in cow speak, but we really aren't sure. The Namibian beef industry exports to the European Union and South Africa, and it is one of the largest industries in a fast-developing economy which leans heavily on this pillar in its export market. Meanwhile, the first big climb was a matter of eyes down and looking. Luckily, the sand was not too loose yet, but just enough for one to keep the concentration levels high and the alertness even higher. But this was perhaps not quite human error. A mechanical very early on for the Jupiter drawing room lads. Not exactly a very comforting thought with another 60 clicks still to go. Luckily, it was sorted out quite quickly. Cillian Gerber in the heat of the day, piling on the pace and the pressure. And it was the Zinplex team who took line honours on stage 1, very comfortably in the end too.
We planned very technically to because we know the guys we're riding against, the Namibians, we know them from previous races, so we had to look at them, we had to look at the terrain, and yeah, we did well. The plan worked out for us.
The Pupkewitz Nissen team, Zoe Mitchell and Irene Steyn, dominated the first day of the Windhoek Light Namib Quest in the women's section and had a comfortable gap in the hotly contested female section.
Well done. No, never done this before, but well, it's quite rocky, and you know the tires are not fine, but it's lovely. Yeah, well marked, so no problem.
Overall, and Cillian Gerber celebrated a 5-minute and 20-second victory on day 1, while Mitchell and Steyn were also comfortable in the lead with a 19-minute gap over the second women's team, the Wannabes. There are very few things in nature that is as captivating as a Namibian sky. Day 2 was ahead, but the quest started with very humble beginnings and a few people who dreamed big. Nama breweries were there from the get-go.
From a humble beginning of what I think 18 or 19 riders to triple that now this year, and exponentially if we can continue with that. In a year or two's time we're going to have over 100 riders, and I think that is, it fits in so nicely with the whole Windhoek story, if I can put it that way. From a couple of mad Germans that wanted to come and brew some beer here in the Namib desert, and now it's become a global brand. And I think this event, the Namib Quest, the Windhoek Light now Namib Quest, will really grow in leaps and bounds, and I can see that international riders from right throughout the globe would be sort of standing queue to come and contest against in this race.
Day 1 proved to be uneventful and fairly smooth sailing. Yes, there were 1 or 2 tumbles, technicals and tough, but in general a day that was good for starters, but it was going to get tougher, much tougher. Stage 2 would be 77 k's long, but a veritable festival of ups and downs, crowned by an 850-meter climb in just a mere 18 kilometers. Ouch, to use just one adjective. The sands in Namibia shift continuously. The wind is responsible for that, and in the interior it is rare to get a completely wind-stilled day at this period of the year. The quest was no different. On day 2, the wildlife was exquisite, and the Gemsbok lambs scuttled along ahead of the Jupiter drawing room team. They in turn were followed by Team 114, Stefanus Steenkamp and Clinton Hilfiger, saddling up for extreme quads, and 102's all-black colours of Cillian Gerber, the overnight leaders. The sky for once perhaps hinted at rain later, but it was yet another pristine day in Africa. Ah, the joys of mountain biking under an endless sky. On the ride in to day 2's finish, the farm roads made for smooth and comfortable riding, with the machines performing admirably in the dry, hot and dusty conditions. For that matter, so were the legs. With the end in sight, the Cillian Gerber combination again prevailed, proving that they were undoubtedly the best prepared two-man outfit over the first 2 days. However, that was only 1/3 done. Could they handle the most extreme part of the race? At the end of day 2, it was Cillian and Gerber who were enjoying an 11-minute lead. Mans Senior and Junior had a rather forgettable day, while Mitchell and Steyn had secured a lead of more than a half an hour. The tented village really was a marvel of planning, foresight and logistics, and by the time the riders got there, it was set up every time. Basil Smith was the miracle man.
It's quite a challenge. Sitting in the middle of the desert, it's completely remote. You need to do, it's like a whole tented town that you need to erect. There's no water, there's no sewage, there's no grey water outlet. So it's basically a whole municipality that you need to create in the middle of nothing. so it makes it quite difficult. But we're used to it. We're doing it for nearly 12 years now, and we're used to creating this kind of environment in the middle of the dunes, where there's also nothing. Each tented village like this, or race village, consists of about 16 ton of equipment. We're making use of 1 ton 4x4 buckies to get through the pass. Boshua Pass is between the villages here, so that is quite a problem, getting the stuff safely here. That's my main concern. The other challenge, as you said, is the water. We're very thankful for the farmers. They're really helping us. Some of the farmers giving us all the household water just to accommodate us. It's really a plus point, and a big thank you to all the farmers.
The 2014 Windhoek Light Namib quest continues right after this. The 2014 Windhoek Light Namib quest continues, and after a good night's rest, the incredible weather in Namibia continued too, as riders set out to conquer the 61 kilometers of day 3. Again, it was a gentle rollout from the start, but again, things would hot up later. It got very technical, very quickly, very early on. The village, soon to be set up at an overnight stop, number 3, was already in various stages of disrepair and on its way from Harmony Farm to the next location. Stage 3 featured a massively mean climb of almost 26 k's. In fact, the route profile looked like a massive shark's tooth turned upside down, huge and an even bigger climb. Team 102, Celia and Gerber, were at their customary place up front, with Team Jupiter drawing boards all white jerseys, with Michael van den Herik and his partner Christo Nim shadowing them. This had been the early pattern of every day. Indeed, day 3 needed a lot of technical skills. A lot of the G-track was very rocky, and there was only one place to keep your stare riveted to, about a meter in front of your front wheel. In fact, the website describes the route like this. The first 4 days of the event takes riders through the Gomas Hoogland Plateau, separating Windhoek from the Namib Desert and eventually the Atlantic Ocean. These days comprise a lot of hilly terrain, short hard climbs, short technical descents, some long climbs, varying from gradual gradient to very steep. The upside is that what goes up must come down. Therefore, some spectacular descents will be experienced as well. In terms of intensity of the day's rides, if you'd managed stages on the Wines to Wales or Sani to Sea, then you would have been able to manage a day on the Namib quest. However, remember, this is a 6-day event. And therein lies the secret. Save your legs as much as is humanly possible. There were 2 more father and son teams in the Windhoek Light race. Johan Pinaar and his 14-year-old son Alet Pinaar were doing the Namib quest to raise funds and awareness for a diabetes charity. The pair performed magnificently. At the other end, Team Warren, Brett Warren from Gaborone, and his 73-year-old father from Somerset West, Stanley, also showed that you are never too old to tick off items on the bucket list. The results after stage 3, and Christo Nim and Michael van den Herik took 14 minutes out of overnight leaders Jacques Cellier and Frans Antoni Gerber. The leading women's team, Stein and Mitchell, with a huge time gap, still steadily pulling away and in the top 10 overall. As if stage 3 wasn't hard enough for the riders to deal with, Mother Nature also had to make a nasty contribution. Overnight at Savasis, the temperatures plummeted to well below freezing, and it was with a bit of daze and cold that the riders woke up to day 4 of the Windhoek Light Namib quest. The usually friendly Namib sun offered little relief to the cold, but Basil Smith and his iDream Africa team of logistics supporters provided a hot breakfast and a few cups of coffee, and slowly everyone in the rest camp started thawing out, and they certainly needed to be at their best. The start of stage 4 was a thriller, with a massive climb less than a kilometer from camp, And just to illustrate the point, race organizer Tinus Hansen's Landy also found the going tough on the climb out of Tsavazes. Stage 4 would last for exactly 70.8 kilometers with a total ascent of almost 1,400 meters and almost as much ascent. A tough riding day was in store with a lot of technical and very demanding terrain to cover. As had become the custom, it was a gentle start to the day, but then things started hotting up. That's weather and pace at the same time. The quest had come to boiling point and was ready to explode. Frans-Antonie Gerber and his Zinplex teammate Jacques Cellier were still applying the pressure and riding with authority. Further back out of the podium places, but with their minds set on making to the finish line at just about all costs, the riders all had that steely look in their eyes. It was indeed shaping up to be a tough day in the saddle and walking, pushing the bike out of it. The Namib quest had been described by one rider as an expedition across vastness. It's a perfect description of an event which in just 4 years has become one of the toughest and certainly most unique mountain bike adventure challenges on the continent and perhaps even in the world. The Jupiter Drawing Board team still going well and trying to make up time. Steenkamp and Hilfiger were also picking up the pace and had the look of the hunter rather than the hunted. All of a sudden, the race had been turned on its head. All of a sudden, the Landies were too being tested just to keep up. The mountain bikers were letting her rip. Fasten that helmet and hold on, please. But it is the technical problems that beset mountain bikers that really bedevil everything. Jupiter Drawing Room, after being in control early on, were now slowly losing their hard-built time advantage to more people in the field. It was quickly ebbing away. As they dropped into the desert, all the riders again had to resort to pushing their bikes. Not that the hill was that steep, but it was because of the soft sand and terrain, and their tires struggled to grip. The loose sand on this part of the route made riding almost impossible. The quads, hammies and calves were rebelling against the harsh treatment. Push, onwards and upwards. Even the leading woman, Irene Steyn, off her bike and pushing. This was all preparation for her as she was off to the World Championships and then the Commonwealth Games, a crucial event in her training and her planning for her big year ahead. Finally, with the overnight stop almost in sight, it was time to turn the legs over, and Namibia's splendor just never stopped. At Donkerhoek Farm, they could call it a halt. iDream Africa took the lead to finish first, their first stage win, and the third pair to win a stage after the dominance of Team Zinplex and Team Jupiter Drawing Room.
Yeah, it was a very tough stage today. We were lucky that those people had problems. And yeah, we're glad that we finished first.
Stage 4 was indeed a tough stretch from Tsavazes to the Donkerhoek Farm on the edge of the Naukluft National Park. As it was, the tyre issues of Team Jupiter Drawing Room lost them almost 55 minutes and almost certainly cost them the 2014 Namib Quest title. The general classification now made some very interesting reading, just a few seconds separating Cellier and Gerber, with Hilfiger and Steenkamp chasing hard, but Christo Nim and Michael van den Herik probably were slightly too far back. Stage 5 was a short 42-kilometer time trial for the riders, and after 4 very demanding days in the saddle, this came as a relief for the by now weary competitors who were still a very long way from their final destination, Swakopmund. The time trial started at Donkerhoek. The riders had to make their way back on the last part of the route of the previous day's stage back onto the C26, then in the direction of Karabib before turning around and heading back to Donkerhoek. The leaders, Gerber and Cillier, tri-bars on and pushing as hard as they possibly could, also very aerodynamic. Antoni Gerber is a former Namibian sevens player, just shows the class always comes through. Beautiful flat farm road, and you could really turn on the speed. With just 13 k's to go to the finish line, in a time trial, you can really push hard. That's why they call it one of the moments of truth in cycling, even on a mountain bike. Hilfiger and Steenkamp pushing hard to try and wipe out the time deficit, but they would eventually finish fourth on the time trial. Just not quite quick enough, and maybe the lack of technical equipment like tri-bars also just not quite helping. Team Jupiter Drawing Room still fighting hard, but day 3 cost them dearly. Breweries' Emil Berger and John Fitzgerald in the colours of the sponsors Windhoek Light, pleased to complete the time trial. Steenkamp and Hilfiger losing just a little bit of time over 42 kilometers and the TT. 1 hour and 28 minutes in the saddle, Jacques Cillier and Frans-Antoine Gerber stretching their advantage even more. Zoe Mitchell and Irene Stein again winning comfortably, but up at the top there was now a 3-minute and 50-odd second gap over Clinton Hilfiger and Stefanus Steenkamp overall. The final day of the 2014 Windhoek Light Namib Quest and a daybreak start for the remaining riders. Everyone who had started in Windhoek was still on their bikes, but some did not finish all the stages but were still allowed to continue riding. This certainly boosted the already very strong sense of camaraderie on the Namib Quest. The final stage, another tough day in the saddle, close to 150 k's from Donkerhoek through the spectacular Naukloof National Park down to Swakopmund. Most of it on dirt road before the final 40 k's or so on paved roads. The Jupiter Drawing Room team tried to break away early but were hauled back very quickly by the rest of the teams, all working together. Stein and Mitchell in control in the women's race, as they were from day 1. Eventually the top 4 teams decided to ride in together as a peloton into the beautiful and charming town of Swakopmund. Finally, the tarmac of Swakopmund, and the finish line could just about be smelt. Indeed, Swakopmund is a charming coastal town. The exacting route passed through the breathtaking mountains of the Gommas Hoogland, then dropping down from there to the notorious Namib Desert with its sand, sun and suffering, and then finally passing through the Namib Naukloof Park. Riders had the privilege of passing through areas that are essentially closed to the general public year-round. At the finish line, the peloton breasting the line and finally realizing that their 6 days of adventure had come to an end.
It was definitely a bit tougher than I expected. It was harsh terrain. It's really, really harsh terrain, and the riding is not easy. It's something of everything. There's climbing, there's technical descending, there's long distances, there's wind, heat. We had minus temperatures at night and everything, so it was tough.
The leading women's teams also together as they entered Swakopmund. Irene Stein and Zoe Mitchell in a class of their own, but a fine performance too by the second-placed women's team, Adele Dallaray and Antje Tietz.
I knew it was going to be tough. I mean, she's a tough lady. As we had this comment, she was chilling in front, I was working at the back. I knew it was going to be tough, so I was geared for it. But I did enjoy it.
Irene, for yourself, happy with the win, obviously?
Yeah, we're just glad we made it till the last day.
And that was the feeling for most of the riders. The mixed team winners, André Legrandsie and Rose Jordan, celebrating their victory. Known as Team Boer and Brit, you can work it out yourself. Fred van Zyl, a senior citizen, showing the youngsters just how it's done. The Pienaars completed their quest, not just the ride, but the quest to earn funds for the fight against diabetes, and they raised a lot of money in the process. And Brett and Stanley Warren making sure that they stayed close to the men who brought all the beer.
It's a brilliant event. I think it started off, we had about 19 riders to start off with. We're on 64 at the moment. The exposure that our brand is getting is excellent in terms of over television exposure over the world. So at the moment we're very happy and we're looking obviously to continue with this. And it's great to associate a healthy beer with a healthy lifestyle.
After 6 days of battling themselves, the elements, and a very demanding and challenging route, it suddenly was all over and time for the final act. Before the prize giving though, a reflection of stage 6, where the peloton finished together, Tour de France style as they do on the Champs-Élysées, everyone all together. Overall though, different story. The fourth team to win in as many races, Jacques Cilliers and Frans-Antoine Gerber, very comfortable in the end by 4 minutes. Zoe Mitchell and Irene Steyn were in a class above the rest and beat a number of male teams, as well as they went on to win the women's overall competition. First time lucky for Jacques Cilliers and Frans-Antoine Gerber. The Windhoek Light Namib quest going from strength to strength. I'm Arnold Gert saying thanks for watching. The 2014 Namib quest was proudly brought to you by Windhoek Light.